Hey guys, what's happening? So let's talk about some cosmic Ghost Rider and what happened to him right after Silver Surfer busted the living daylights out of him. Literally, like in every sense of that phrase. And what I want to do for a little bit is talk about what happened to him right after and how that leads into his own solo series. Because when we were talking about Thanos Wings, I mentioned that that event had a number of purposes, much like any other event. But more specifically, one of those purposes was introducing Cosmic Ghost Rider in a storyline that would just introduce him and give us an idea of who he is, not so much with the purpose of fleshing out his background, even though we did get a little bit of that through the series, but that wasn't the main objective concerning Cosmic Ghost Rider in Thanos Wings. And for the most part, the narrative stayed millions of years in the future, and we got a few callbacks to who he was before, and that was mainly for us just to understand who he was at the moment in that story when we needed to know. But for the most part, by placing him in this event with present Thanos and another Thanos from millions of years in the future, along with Silver Surfer, who at that point had become the Fallen One. But by placing him in the middle of this chaotic event with these wildly powerful characters, Galactus included, that more so served the purpose of giving us a scale to show us where he measured up in comparison to these wildly powerful characters that we know from the present that still exist millions of years in the future. Galactus not included. Well, y'all know how that went. But with setting up this narrative and showing us how long it's been since he was human. And even after initially becoming the Rider and being on Earth in isolation for countless years, nearly to the point of insanity, but also by creating those gaps in time and jumping far enough ahead to show us, okay, well, this isolation, it changed his character. And that part plays more into why he's more of a joking type of character now, versus before becoming the Rider, he didn't play no games. But over the complete span of however many million years, everything that he's been through, it's one, made him a character with many more layers, but it's also left gaps for more storytelling going forward. And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But with Thanos Wings giving us the supposed death of Cosmic Ghost Rider, it really just set us up for the beginning of a whole new journey for him. Because keep in mind, from a narrative standpoint, Thanos Wins, its main objective is to tell the story of Thanos winning. Plain and simple. And of course there are other things covered along the way, but within that story arc, it just wouldn't have made sense to go over to Cosmic Ghost Rider and continue to explain his journey alongside with the Thanos Wins story arc. Like, that just wouldn't have made sense. But also, that's why we're getting these answers now after that arc has completed. And it's given to us not so much as a continuation after Thanos pretty much erased the future or erased that reality, but instead we pick up with Cosmic Ghost Rider right after what appeared to be his death, and we see him like in this limbo between life and death, or between afterlife and life after death, if that makes any sense. But after physically being destroyed, which is what brought him here, once again in what appears to be a place of isolation, during this moment he starts to think back to his time with Thanos, more specifically to the daily ritual of Thanos, where every day he would have Ghost Rider give him the penance stare, which is supposed to be torture to his victims, because the recipient can not only see but feel the pain that they've inflicted on the innocent, and they would suffer that all at one time. And to most it would be an excruciating epiphany, but for Thanos he would just bathe in the memory of his most terrifying deeds. But what we find out from the writer as he sits here reminiscing back on all of this is that for him, he remembers how these events went down in vivid detail. From Gamora's training, having her kill like countless people until the point of exhaustion and destroying worlds, just extinguishing life only to the purpose of each planet only being a drop of paint on a larger canvas. And I mean, it is impossible to try to even round up a number that would even be close to the amount of lives that he's taken, or to the amount of worlds that he's just evaporated, all just to express his affection for Mistress Death. And we've seen Thanos use the gauntlet on a large scale, and we've seen him produce death either through violence or just making people disappear. Oh man, too soon. But Cosmic Ghost Rider has seen it all. He's seen the violence, and he's even seen Thanos cause devastation to the universe just by merely altering one event ever so gently, but the outcome would affect all life in existence from that moment or that location to the furthest ends of the universe. And man, just as an example, there was a time Thanos helped a lady cross the street in order to delay a bus, that bus just a few seconds, so that a woman on that bus by the name of Stephanie Kircher, so that she would never bump into the woman by the name of Suzanne. And I know you're probably thinking, one, Thanos helping this lady cross the street, How sweet. And 2, so what she didn't meet Suzanne? That's one less friend on her Facebook page. But by delaying this bust just a few seconds and causing Stephanie to never meet Suzanne, who was supposed to be like her first friend, because Stephanie was always into books, always learning, and at that moment where she was supposed to meet Suzanne, for Stephanie, it would have been the first time that she looked up out of the book and made a connection with another human being. And from that moment with Stephanie becoming social and coming out of her own world, after meeting this first friend, she would go on to use her brilliant mind to cure disease and hunger and stop inequality on the entire planet, essentially turning the world into a paradise. And eventually her influence would reach the entire universe. But because she never met Suzanne, because she never bumped into her, she never bumped into anyone, none of this ever happened. But to make it worse, Thanos came back and visited her on her deathbed and showed her everything that she would have been, all the lives she would have reached. And she sees all this in the last seconds of her life, overwhelmed with regret that she didn't do any of it. Truly savage. And like I said, it's not always destroying planets or wiping out a huge number of people from existence, at least not always directly, but it was more so the times like the previous example where Thanos would still cause devastation that would reach across the universe, and for him those instances would make the penance stare even more sweeter. And at that particular time for Thanos, his love for Mistress Death would have grown even deeper. But even for Thanos, it wasn't always about Mistress Death, because at one point in time, he had visited a people called the Calrasians. And the Calrasians, they were created by Halden, the Immortal, and they would live their lives mainly tending to farming and agriculture, and they would worship Halden, to whom which when they die, Halden would reabsorb and they would live through him forever. But thanks to Thanos, there was one little problem with that. And that problem was Halden was kinda dead, like really dead. Thanos ripped off his head and burned his heart. Dead, yeah. And there's 2 things that's pretty crazy about this. Well, it's more than 2 things that's crazy about it, but 2 things that really stood out about this one in particular. Or better yet, make that 3. Because 1, Thanos kind of came to the assumption that Halden had made this system in order to sustain his life or possibly heal him later on if needed, and that's why he created these people. And that's never confirmed, so as the reader, we really don't know. But the second thing, with Halden gone, Thanos goes straight to the place where these people are worshiping, and he's like, when you die, you just gonna switch off. Like after your life is over, there is nothing. But the third thing is why he did this, why he did it. And his reply was just, oh, I was curious. And he says it with the I hope they remember you face. Man, that's cold. And in case you guys are wondering where these different tales are from, Thanos Annual, Volume 2, Number 1, and these are just a few examples, because it's a pretty big issue with a lot of different stories, once again all pulling from some of the different instances that Cosmic Ghost Rider's seen while giving Thanos the penance stare. But also while telling these narratives, it appears like he's breaking the 4th wall, but instead he's actually talking to Odin in front of the entrance of Valhalla, and with him meeting Odin and both of them entering Valhalla together, and with Frank Castle returning to his human form upon entry, it's after this moment where we'll pick up with the new series of Cosmic Ghost Rider. And if I had to guess, much like Earth 90200, we may get a moment in that series where Frank Castle's reunited with his family. And I mean in Earth 90200, Frank Castle, his family never died. But in the upcoming Cosmic Ghost Rider solo series, I believe he'll be reunited with them at some point after entering Valhalla. And I'm not gonna front, there's a lot of things that I'm hoping to see in this series. And with it branching off or spinning off from Thanos Wings, where a number of times in that series, it kind of played with the idea of can Ghost Rider die? And there were like 2 or 3 times in Thanos Wins where Thanos was like, well, let me test that theory. But what I'm hoping is that one point within Cosmic Ghost Rider, at the point where Thanos destroys reality, that the effect reaches everywhere. Because the annual issue picks up from where Cosmic Ghost Rider was destroyed. And as we know from the Thanos Wins series, a few things happened after that. And if they take that route and time catches up with Frank Castle, no pun intended, and he has to part from Valhalla because of his curse, leaving him as one of the last entities remaining like Mistress Death, the same way she still remained when reality was gone, for Frank Castle, this would be like losing his family just like the first time all over again. And in turn, it would like rekindle the Punisher within. And this would give us a Cosmic Ghost Rider who's going after Thanos like nothing we've ever seen. Because keep in mind, when Thanos went back in time, he only had a piece of the Time Stone. It was only a shard of it, so there's still more. Hey, maybe they'll use that? Maybe my imagination's just running away with me for the next one. Who knows? Personally, that's just kind of my thoughts on where I want to see it go. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Now that hopefully you got a clearer understanding on what happened to Cosmic Ghost Rider and how it connects into issue 1 that's coming soon, but also that this guy knows Thanos like nobody else. Like, he knows Thanos because of the penance stare. Like, he's seen it all. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. We'll chop it up and we'll do it again on the next one. Alright, later.